Imagine this: no hospital, no doctor, no painkillers, no clean bed, just you, a small dark room, a fire burning in the corner, and the most painful experience a human body can go through. For thousands of years, this was not a nightmare. This was just Tuesday. This was how every single human being on this planet arrived. Today, we are going to travel from ancient caves to modern delivery rooms. We'll talk about what ancient women went through, why so many babies and mothers didn't survive, and exactly what changed. Some of this will shock you, some of it will move you, and a little bit of it will make you very, very grateful for modern medicine. Stay with me. Let's go back, way back. We're talking ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, ancient Greece, China, indigenous tribes across the world, civilizations that were brilliant in many ways. They built pyramids, they studied stars, they wrote poetry. But childbirth was terrifying. In most ancient societies, becoming pregnant was not just joyful, it was also a sentence of uncertainty. Would you and the baby survive? Nobody knew. There were no hospitals. There were no doctors in the modern sense. There was one person who mattered most, the midwife, an older woman, usually from the village, who had seen birth before and had learned, through experience, tradition, and honestly, a lot of guessing, what to do. The midwife came armed with herbs, oils, prayers, and rituals. In Egypt, they placed amulets on the mother's body. In ancient Greece, they burned special wood to invite the goddess Aletheia, the goddess of childbirth, into the room. Because here's the truth: when science can't help you, you turn to belief. And in the ancient world, every culture on Earth had a god or goddess specifically for childbirth. That tells you everything about how dangerous it was. So let's walk through exactly what happened, step by step. What did ancient women face? What could go wrong? And what did ancient people actually do about it? First question, where? Where did ancient women give birth? The answer depends entirely on where in the world and when in history we're looking. In ancient Rome, wealthy women gave birth in their own bedrooms, surrounded by female servants and midwives. Poor women, sometimes they gave birth in the fields, literally between tasks. There was no maternity leave. There was no "we'll reschedule this." The baby came when the baby came. One of the most interesting inventions of the ancient world was the birthing stool. Used in Egypt, Greece, and Mesopotamia, it was basically a chair with a large hole cut out of the seat. The mother sat on it, and the midwife worked from below. It used gravity to help the baby come down, which is actually not a bad idea. Modern medicine still uses versions of this today. In many indigenous cultures across the Americas and Africa, women gave birth outdoors, near water, near trees. It was seen as a sacred connection to the earth. The community of women gathered around. It was not shameful or hidden. It was considered one of the most powerful things a human being could do. In ancient India, the Ayurvedic tradition had surprisingly detailed guidelines for childbirth. Special rooms were prepared. Specific herbs were used before, during, and after. There were instructions on breathing, on positioning, on what to eat. For its time, it was actually quite advanced. But here is the key difference. Advanced for its time still meant no antibiotics, no blood transfusions, no way to perform a safe surgery if things went wrong. And things went wrong. A lot. This is the part where we need to talk honestly, because childbirth in the ancient world was not romantic. It was genuinely life-threatening, and the reasons are both medical and circumstantial. Problem number one, wrong position. A baby is supposed to come out head first, but sometimes, then and now, the baby positions itself feet first, or sideways. Today, doctors detect this weeks early with ultrasound and either turn the baby manually or plan a C-section. In the ancient world, the midwife had to figure this out with her hands, and if she couldn't fix it, the consequences were devastating. The Kahun Papyrus from ancient Egypt, one of the oldest medical documents ever found, actually describes methods for dealing with difficult births. They tried specific positions, manual turning of the baby, and herbal preparations to speed up or slow down labor. These women were not ignorant. They were working with everything they had. Problem number two, bleeding. After the baby is born, the uterus needs to contract and stop bleeding. Today, this is managed with medication in seconds. In the ancient world, the only options were herbal medicines. Some actually worked, like ergot fungus used in Europe, which causes uterine contraction. But if it didn't work, there was nothing left to try. Hemorrhage, excessive bleeding, was the #1 killer of mothers across all of human history. Problem number 3, infection. After birth, the open wound inside the body is extremely vulnerable to bacteria. Today, we have antibiotics. In the ancient world, they had no idea bacteria even existed. They washed with water, they used herbal pastes, they prayed, and sometimes infection crept in anyway, silently, slowly, and fatally. Here's something that will genuinely shock you. This problem wasn't fully solved in ancient times. It wasn't even solved in the 1800s. In the 1840s, women were dying of infection, called childbed fever, in European hospitals at rates higher than women giving birth at home. Why? Because doctors were going from performing autopsies directly to delivering babies without washing their hands. The doctor was accidentally the danger. A Hungarian doctor named Ignaz Semmelweis figured this out and told his colleagues to just wash their hands. They laughed at him. He was eventually fired. Women kept dying. He died in a mental institution. And 3 decades later, Louis Pasteur proved germ theory, and the whole world realized Semmelweis was completely right. Let that sit with you for a moment. Thousands of women died from something preventable because the men in charge refused to believe the evidence. History has moments like this that are hard to look at directly. And then there was the baby. In ancient times, infant mortality was staggering. In some ancient societies, 1 in 3 babies did not survive their first year of life, not because parents didn't love them, they did deeply, but because premature birth, infection, breathing complications, and lack of oxygen during a difficult delivery all had no solutions. Ancient literature is full of grief. Ancient Egyptian mothers wrote prayers for their children. Ancient Roman tombstones mark babies who lived only days. Ancient Chinese poetry speaks of the sorrow of infant loss. This was not rare. This was the shared grief of humanity for most of our history. But here's what I want you to understand. Ancient people were not passive. They fought back with everything available to them. Let's look at what they actually tried. In ancient Egypt, midwives used a plant called juniper to stimulate contractions. They used oils of lotus and myrrh for comfort and infection prevention. Garlic was widely used across ancient cultures, and interestingly, modern research has confirmed garlic has real antimicrobial properties. They didn't know why it worked, but they observed that it helped. Ancient Greek medicine, following Hippocrates, brought a more systematic approach. Midwives were trained. There were actual written guidelines. Hippocrates described optimal birth positions and even early versions of what we'd call fetal monitoring, listening for movement, checking the mother's color and pulse. For 400 BCE, this was remarkable. In ancient China, acupuncture was used during labor. Certain pressure points were believed to ease pain and stimulate the body. The interesting thing, modern research has found that some of these points do trigger real physiological responses. The ancient Chinese were onto something. They just didn't have the vocabulary to explain it. In Ayurvedic medicine in ancient India, the approach was holistic. Warm oil massages, steam therapy with herbs, specific sitting and squatting positions to open the pelvis, and dietary guidelines starting months before delivery. The concept was, prepare the body thoroughly so that delivery has the best possible chance.
Oh, sacred mother, we sing to you, bringing strength
in many
to
indigenous
you and your
cultures,
child.
birth was a community ceremony.
Strength.
Women sang over the laboring mother. Specific chants were believed to call protection. The emotional support of a community of experienced women around you is not something to dismiss. Modern research shows that continuous emotional support during labor genuinely reduces complications and improves outcomes. Now let's talk about surgery. You've probably heard that the word cesarean section comes from Julius Caesar. The story goes that Caesar himself was born by C-section. Almost certainly not true. His mother Aurelia survived his birth and lived for decades after, and C-sections in the ancient world were performed only when the mother had already died to try to save the baby, but the legend stuck. The first recorded successful cesarean section, where both mother and baby survived, happened in 1500 in Switzerland. A pig farmer named Jacob Neufer performed it on his wife after she had been in labor for several days and all the midwives had given up. Somehow, both survived. His wife went on to have 5 more children. This story was not widely believed at the time. It sounds made up, but it's in the historical record. True surgical C-sections didn't become reliably safe until the late 1800s, when doctors finally understood how to properly close the uterus with sutures to prevent fatal bleeding. Everything before that was improvisation, bravery, and a great deal of luck. The midwife, across all of this history, was the constant, the person who stayed in the room for hours, sometimes days, who held the mother's hand, who made decisions with no equipment and no backup. There is a reason midwives are some of the most respected figures in human history. What they did took genuine courage. So when did things start to change? The first real turning point came in the 1700s and 1800s, and it didn't happen smoothly or quickly. Change in medicine almost never does. In the 1600s, William Harvey mapped how blood circulates through the body. This sounds basic now, but it completely changed medicine, including understanding why mothers bled to death after delivery and what the body was actually trying to do. Then came forceps, metal instruments designed to grip the baby's head and help guide it out in difficult deliveries. They were invented by a British family called the Chamberlains in the early 1600s. Here's the part that will make you furious. They kept it a secret for over 100 years to make money. A life-saving medical device, secret, for profit, for a century. Then came germ theory in the 1860s, courtesy of Louis Pasteur and later Joseph Lister. Suddenly, medicine understood. Infections are caused by invisible living organisms. Wash your hands, sterilize your tools, clean the room. This single insight saved more lives in childbirth than any drug developed before or since. In 1847, James Simpson in Scotland used chloroform to relieve pain during childbirth for the first time. Women who had suffered through hours of agonizing labor could now be given relief. The response from parts of the religious establishment? Outrage. Some argued that pain in childbirth was God's design and should not be interfered with. Queen Victoria eventually shut that argument down by publicly using chloroform during her own delivery in 1853. When the Queen of England says, "Yes, I want the pain medication," the debate tends to end rather quickly. By the early 1900s, in the United States and Europe, childbirth was moving into hospitals. Doctors were replacing midwives as the primary attendants. This had mixed results. The technology was better, but hospitals of the early 1900s still had serious infection problems, and the highly medicalized approach sometimes created its own complications. In 1901, Karl Landsteiner discovered blood types. This meant blood transfusions could finally be done safely. For the first time in history, a mother who was bleeding to death could be saved with donated blood. This was revolutionary. This changed everything. And then, 1928, Alexander Fleming discovers penicillin. By the 1940s, antibiotics are being widely used. Childbed fever, which had killed mothers for all of recorded human history, becomes treatable. The #1 cause of maternal death in childbirth, cured by a mold, growing on an accidentally contaminated petri dish. Now let's step into the modern era. And let's be specific, because this video's audience is largely in the United States and similar countries. Let's talk about what childbirth in a modern American hospital actually looks like. It starts before the baby even arrives. In the United States today, prenatal care begins in the first trimester, the first 3 months, multiple ultrasounds, blood tests, genetic screening. The doctor knows the baby's position, estimated size, heart rate, and potential complications weeks or months before delivery. Ancient mothers had none of this. The first time they knew something was wrong was usually when it was already an emergency. Then there's the epidural, a thin needle placed in the lower back that delivers continuous pain medication directly to the nerves. Within minutes, the pain of contractions becomes manageable. This single invention has changed the experience of labor more than almost anything else. Ancient women would not believe this is real. Continuous electronic fetal monitoring tracks the baby's heart rate throughout labor. The moment there's any sign of distress, any dip in heart rate, any irregular pattern, the medical team knows immediately. In the ancient world, a baby in distress during labor was invisible until it was too late. Modern cesarean sections are performed in sterile operating rooms by surgical teams in under an hour. The survival rate for both mother and baby in a modern C-section is over 99%. In the ancient world, the same procedure was a last resort used to save the baby after the mother had already died. The same operation, completely different outcomes. And for babies who arrive too early, the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit, a baby born at 28 weeks, nearly 3 months early, has a survival rate of over 90% in a modern American hospital. In the ancient world, a premature baby had almost no chance. Today, these tiny warriors are surrounded by incubators, oxygen monitors, feeding tubes, and a team of specialists whose entire job is keeping them alive and growing. If labor slows down or stalls, doctors can administer Pitocin, a synthetic version of oxytocin, to restart or strengthen contractions safely. If bleeding occurs after delivery, medications called uterotonics contract the uterus in seconds. The two things that killed the most women in childbirth throughout history can now be managed in minutes. Modern American hospitals deliver around 3.6 million babies a year. The current maternal mortality rate in the United States is about 23 per 100,000 births. That sounds small, and compared to ancient times, when some estimates suggest maternal mortality was 1 in 8 pregnancies, it is an extraordinary improvement. Though it's worth noting, the U.S. still has work to do. Among wealthy nations, America's maternal mortality rate is higher than average, particularly for Black women, who face rates nearly 3 times higher than white women. The progress is real, but it is not yet equal. Let me give you some numbers to understand just how dramatic the change is. In ancient Rome, estimates suggest maternal mortality was between 1,000 and 2,000 per 100,000 births. In 1900 in the United States, it was still around 600 to 900 per 100,000. Today in the US, it is 23. That is a roughly 40 to 1 improvement in about 120 years. Globally, the picture is more complicated. In parts of sub-Saharan Africa, maternal mortality rates are still close to what the ancient world experienced, not because the knowledge doesn't exist, but because the access and infrastructure don't. What separates a safe birth from a dangerous one today is often not science, it's geography and economics. And interestingly, midwives are coming back, not as the only option, but as a valued part of modern care. Certified nurse midwives in the United States assist in about 10% of all births. Studies consistently show that continuous support from a dedicated midwife or doula during labor reduces C-section rates, reduces need for pain medication, and improves outcomes for both mother and baby. Some of what ancient people knew about support, community, and patient-centered care is being rediscovered. Planned home births with certified midwives are also growing in popularity in the United States, particularly for low-risk pregnancies. For women who want a less medicalized experience, it's now possible to do so with trained professionals and emergency protocols in place, something that is very different from giving birth on a straw mat with no backup. And telehealth is bringing prenatal care to places that didn't have it before. A pregnant woman in rural Montana can now video call an ENT specialist who is physically in New York City. The ancient midwife was the only option because the only option had to be local. Today, expertise can travel through a screen. Here is what stays with me after going deep into this topic. The fear was the same. Across every century, every civilization, every culture, a woman going into labor felt fear. She hoped her baby would be healthy. She hoped she would survive. She held on to the people around her. The love was the same. Ancient Egyptian mothers wrote charms to protect their newborns that read thousands of years later, exactly like something you'd find on a modern parenting app. May nothing harm you. May you grow strong. The words are different. The feeling is identical. The caregivers, whether an ancient midwife with a bundle of herbs or a modern labor nurse with an epidural catheter, were trying to do the same thing. Be present, be calm, help this person through the hardest thing they would ever do. What changed is the outcome. That's what's almost impossible to fully absorb. Babies who would have died in ancient times are alive today because of a piece of plastic, a machine, a drug developed in a lab. The grief that was once simply accepted as part of life is now sometimes preventable. If ancient women could time travel to a modern delivery room, I genuinely believe the first thing they would do is stare at the epidural, ask who invented it, find that person's grave, and leave flowers permanently. Giving birth today is still hard. It is still intense. It is still one of the most demanding things a human body can do. Nobody is saying it's easy, but the difference between hard and life-threatening, that difference is everything. Right now, in hospitals across America, in Chicago, in Houston, in Los Angeles, in rural Tennessee, people are being born. Teams of specialists are watching monitors. Medications are being given. Surgeries are happening perfectly. And the vast majority of the time, both mother and baby go home healthy. Ancient mothers looked up at the same stars we look at tonight and asked the same question, will my baby be okay? They deserved better answers than they had. We have those answers now. That is not something to take for granted. From that single candle in a dark hut to a bright, equipped delivery room, the distance is measured not just in years, but in lives. Millions and millions of lives that would not exist if not for every piece of knowledge that got passed forward from ancient midwife to modern medicine. If this video gave you something to think about, a fact that surprised you, a story that moved you, share it with someone. Subscribe if you're new here. We make videos exactly like this one, where we go deep into the human stories behind history, science, and human behavior. Thank you for watching. And the next time you're in a hospital and a nurse walks in, maybe remember what we talked about today.